The human transport ship hummed softly as it descended through the thick, greenish clouds of the Xyar homeworld. Outside the small windows, swirls of strange gases shimmered in the dim light, casting pale shadows across the cabin. Captain Elias Ward stood near the viewport, his arms crossed, eyes steady, studying the alien world below. For years, humans had traveled the stars, negotiating trade and peace with alien civilizations. But the Xyar were different. They were known for their power, their intelligence, and their unwavering command of their hive. Most who entered their territory did so under strict supervision, and few ever returned with stories that did not end in caution or fear. Elias was not afraid. He had learned early in life that fear was a tool, but only if you allowed it to control you. He had trained, traveled, and faced dangers that most humans could not imagine. Yet even he knew that the Xyar were formidable. Their queen was said to be unmatched in both cunning and influence, a ruler who could bend her entire civilization to her will. Elias did not intend to challenge her. He intended to remind her of something far stronger than fear, something human. The ship shuddered lightly as it entered the upper atmosphere, and the landing gear unfolded with a quiet mechanical groan. Around him, other members of the human security team prepared themselves. They were skilled, disciplined, and ready. But unlike Elias, they had never faced a ruler whose gaze could strip confidence bare. Each carried the tools of their trade, but Elias carried something more subtle: the ability to remind even the most powerful beings of who they once were and what they once loved. The transport touched down on a plateau near the center of the alien city, a structure that rose like a crown of jagged crystals. The Xyar Palace loomed, vast and magnificent, a living structure with walls that seemed to pulse with light. The team disembarked carefully, their boots crunching on the metallic ground. Elias led the way, moving with quiet confidence, his presence calm but commanding. Around him, the team sensed something they could not explain. There was a power in him, not of brute force, but of presence. An ability to make the world pause, even if just for a heartbeat. As they approached the palace gates, massive Xyar guards emerged. They were taller than any human, their bodies plated in smooth, Keaton-like armor that reflected the light in sharp angles. Each carried long, slender weapons, not aimed, but held as if ready to act at a moment's notice. The humans raised no weapons, and the Xyar studied them with curious eyes. They expected fear or hesitation, but they found neither. Elias stopped a few steps before the gates and raised a hand in a gesture of peace. For a moment, the air seemed to thicken, as if the universe itself paused. And then, the gates opened. Inside, the palace was a spectacle of geometry and light. The walls were alive with shifting colors, patterns that seemed almost organic, like veins pulsing with energy. Strange, bioluminescent flora lined the corridors, their soft glow casting shadows that danced across the floor. Every corner seemed alive, as if the building itself were a conscious entity, watching and listening to its visitors. The human team advanced cautiously, taking in the strange beauty, their eyes wide with wonder. Then, at the far end of the main hall, she appeared. The Xyar Queen was unlike any being Elias had ever seen. Her form was elegant, her movements precise and controlled, yet there was an aura of authority that radiated from her in waves. She was taller than most humans, her skin a pale, shifting shade of silver that seemed to reflect light in unpredictable ways. Her eyes were large, multifaceted, and intelligent, capturing everything in the room with a single glance. Normally, such a creature would inspire fear, but when she saw Elias, she froze. It was a brief moment, almost imperceptible, but Elias noticed. Her posture, rigid and commanding moments before, softened. Her gaze lingered on him longer than necessary, and a faint, almost human hesitation entered her expression. The other humans noticed it too, exchanging glances, but Elias kept his composure. He knew that recognition, not fear, had caused this pause. He moved forward slowly, deliberately, showing no threat, no aggression. The Queen's courtiers shifted nervously, murmuring among themselves. They were used to the Queen's unflinching control, and they did not understand why this human caused her to hesitate. Yet Elias walked on, steady and unyielding, a reminder of something long buried in her memory. As he neared the center of the hall, Elias noticed a large window overlooking the alien city. Strange towers jutted into the sky, their surfaces glowing softly with energy. The city was alive with movement. But from this height, it seemed serene, almost fragile. Elias thought about the stories of civilizations destroyed by fear, by misunderstanding, and by the failure to connect. Humans had survived because they adapted, because they remembered the value of trust, courage, and empathy. He hoped the Queen would see that too. Finally, he stopped a few meters from her, bowing slightly in respect. "I do not claim to replace him," he said softly. "But perhaps I can remind you that some things are worth remembering, worth protecting. That strength comes not just from power, but from understanding and care." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. The hall was silent, except for the soft hum of the palace. Then she moved, not forward, not backward, but a slight tilt of her head, a gesture acknowledging his words. It was a start, a small opening, but one that could grow. Elias felt a quiet hope, not for himself, but for the possibility of connection, of peace, and of recognition. He did not need to force her. Humans had long survived not by conquering, but by understanding. And in that moment, he realized that even the most powerful alien queen could remember what it was to care, to mourn, and to trust. The rest of the team followed him cautiously, now more attentive to the subtle shifts in the room. The Queen's pause had given them insight into something humans had always known, that empathy, patience, and memory were as powerful as any weapon. Elias smiled faintly, knowing that this was only the beginning. They had entered her world, and already, without a single act of aggression, a bridge had begun to form. Outside, the clouds swirled and shifted, painting the city in strange, ethereal colors. Inside, the human guard and the alien queen faced each other, separated by culture, species, and history, yet connected in ways that words could not fully express. And for the first time in many years, the Queen allowed herself to pause, to remember, and to feel the quiet pull of a human presence that reminded her of what she had once loved. It was the beginning of something larger than either of them, a reminder that humans were capable not only of surviving in the stars, but of shaping hearts, minds, and worlds with nothing more than courage, intelligence, and respect. The hall was silent after the brief, tense encounter. Elias remained where he had stopped, standing tall yet relaxed, while the Queen's gaze lingered on him with a mix of curiosity and caution. The other humans followed slowly, each step measured, aware that this was not merely a physical space. They were entering. It was a world of memory, power, and subtle signals that could turn hostility into understanding or trust into danger. Elias felt the weight of their observation, but did not falter. He had been trained to read rooms, and this was no ordinary room. This was a palace alive with intelligence, with the Queen's presence woven into every wall, every flicker of light, every pulse in the floor beneath their feet. And yet, despite the grandeur and alien nature of the space, he felt something familiar here, something human. The Queen's silence was not cold, it was deliberate. She was measuring, analyzing, trying to understand the anomaly before her. Humans rarely evoked this response. They were usually predictable, either afraid, aggressive, or clever, but limited. Elias was different. He reminded her of something she had once trusted, someone she had once allowed into her inner world. The feeling unsettled her, and for a being of such absolute control, the sensation was both dangerous and exhilarating. Finally, she spoke, her voice melodic yet edged with authority. "Why do you come here, human? Why do you not carry weapons like the others?" Elias inclined his head slightly. "We are here to speak, not to fight. My team respects your world and your people. We come in peace, and we seek understanding." The queen tilted her head. Understanding is a dangerous thing. It allows weakness. It allows betrayal. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I once trusted a human. It cost me dearly." Elias remained still, letting the silence stretch just long enough for her words to sink into the room. "I know," he said softly, "and I am not that human. But I am part of what he believed in courage, honesty, and respect. If trust is dangerous, perhaps it is also necessary." The queen studied him. Her mandibles moved slightly, a gesture humans could not fully interpret, but one that suggested thought, calculation, perhaps even hesitation. For centuries, she had relied on absolute caution, yet here was a human who did not demand submission or awe. He demanded recognition of memory, of connection, of values that transcended time. "Your words are different," she admitted finally. "I see a part of him in you, yet you are not him. And yet," she paused, the words catching in a way that suggested internal conflict. "You remind me of him. In voice, in manner, in patience." Elias allowed a small nod. "Then perhaps that is enough for now. Perhaps it is enough that we can speak, that we can begin to understand each other." A faint, almost imperceptible shift passed through her posture. The queen, so long accustomed to absolute control and unquestioned loyalty, found herself hesitant, observing a human not as a subject or an enemy, but as a mirror to a memory she thought lost. She had forgotten the power of such reflection, the quiet strength it could wield. The humans continued their slow advance into the palace, guided by Elias's calm direction. He noticed the strange details around them. Walls that pulsed with faint energy, floors that seemed to resonate underfoot, and strange symbols etched into the architecture that glowed softly. The palace was alive, a symbiotic entity with its queen. It tested them subtly, observing reactions, adjusting lighting and perspective as if it were alive. Elias did not flinch. He moved with purpose and observation, aware that every gesture, every breath, every step was part of the silent negotiation between human and alien intelligence. Courtiers emerged cautiously from side corridors, whispering to each other in a language humans could not understand. The queen's attendants were skilled, their movements elegant and precise, yet there was an uncertainty that had never existed before. They watched their ruler's reaction closely. Humans rarely inspired such responses in the queen, and they could not predict what would happen next. Elias continued, careful to remain respectful yet assertive. "Your world is remarkable," he said softly, gesturing toward the architecture and living walls. "It is unlike anything humans have seen before, yet it is clear that it thrives on care, respect, and order. You have built something extraordinary here." The queen's eyes softened again, and she considered his words. Humans were known for their ingenuity, their resilience, and their adaptability. They were not always gentle, but they could surprise those who underestimated them. And Elias was proof. He approached not with weapons or threats, but with awareness, insight, and patience, a combination that unsettled her more than any aggression ever could. As they moved deeper into the palace, the queen's memories began to surface more vividly. Flashes of her lost companion, the human diplomat, came unbidden. She remembered the late-night discussions, the strategies they had devised to prevent war, the quiet laughter in gardens that now existed only in her mind. Elias's presence stirred these memories without a word, a living reminder that some things endured even when time and space had tried to erase them. The hall opened into a large chamber, circular and bright with natural light filtering through crystal-like structures above. The humans paused, respecting the space, and Elias stepped forward. "If it pleases you, Your Majesty," he said, "we would like to learn more about your world, your people, and how humans and Xyar might understand each other better. Not through force, but through dialogue and cooperation." The queen studied him carefully. Cooperation was a foreign word in her court, often equated with weakness or manipulation. Yet here was a human who spoke it without hesitation, without expectation of submission. His words were simple, but the intention behind them was clear. He sought connection, not conquest. That was something she had not expected from a human in decades. "You speak as if you know me," she said finally. "But you do not. You cannot know the complexities of my reign, the burdens of leadership, or the weight of loss. You speak lightly of cooperation." "No." Elias did not falter. "I cannot know all of it, Your Majesty," he replied calmly. "But I have learned this. Strength is measured not only by power or fear, but by understanding, by the ability to face loss and still act with purpose. Humans survive because we adapt, because we learn, because we remember what matters." The queen regarded him for a long moment, her mind wrestling with the truths he had spoken. She realized that humans possessed a type of resilience she had underestimated, a combination of ingenuity, emotional intelligence, and persistence that allowed them to survive in hostile environments. Elias embodied these qualities, and in doing so, he reminded her of her own vulnerabilities and the companion she had once loved. The humans took seats on soft, elevated platforms that seemed to adjust to their weight automatically, part of the living architecture of the palace. Elias remained standing, as though ready to leave at any moment, but also ready to guide, to protect, and to lead if needed. His presence was steadying, a contrast to the queen's own tumultuous emotions. The queen's courtiers murmured among themselves, uncertain how to interpret this unusual situation. Their ruler, usually untouchable and unwavering, was now engaged in a silent dialogue with a human who had not spoken of strategy or threat, but had instead appealed to memory, respect, and understanding. One of the queen's attendants, a sleek figure with reflective eyes, stepped forward cautiously. "Your Majesty, shall we question them? They are guests, but they are still humans." The queen shook her head slightly. "No. Let us observe. Let us see who they are, what they bring, and how they move. There is something in him that is not ordinary. Watch carefully." Elias noticed the shift in energy, but did not comment. He understood that trust was fragile, built slowly, and maintained through consistent behavior. Each step he took, each respectful word, each calm gesture, reinforced the image he wished to project. That humans could be allies, that humans could be trusted, and that humans were capable of reminding even the most powerful beings of what they had once held dear. Hours passed as conversation unfolded in subtle ways. Elias asked questions about the palace, about the Xyar people, about their history. The queen responded cautiously, her answers measured, revealing small glimpses of her world and her perspective. It was not much, but it was enough. Each answer was a thread, and Elias began to weave a tapestry of understanding between species, one that relied not on force or fear, but on curiosity, respect, and patience. As the sun, or what passed for a sun in this alien sky, shifted overhead, the queen's attention wavered once again. Her thoughts turned to the past, to the diplomat she had lost, and to the qualities that had made him extraordinary. Elias reminded her of all that. Without even trying. He was not her lost companion, yet he carried the essence of what she had valued most: integrity, patience, and the courage to face the unknown. Finally, She spoke, her voice quieter now, almost reflective. You are not him, human. But you remind me of what I once trusted. And perhaps, for the first time in many years, I can consider that humans may be more than what I feared. Elias inclined his head respectfully. That is all I ask, Your Majesty. Let us begin with understanding. From there, all else can follow. The queen regarded him silently, her gaze softening, though her strength remained intact. It was a balance she had not thought possible, to be open yet powerful, vulnerable yet commanding. And yet, here it was, brought forth by a human whose presence alone reminded her of memory, of hope, and of the resilience of another species she had long underestimated. And in that quiet chamber, as sunlight danced across crystal walls and strange bioluminescent flora shimmered, the beginning of a new relationship between human and Xyar was forged not through aggression or dominance, but through recognition, patience, and the enduring power of memory. Elias Ward had reminded the queen that even in the vastness of space, even amidst loss and power, connection was possible, and that humans were capable of more than survival. They were capable of inspiring change, even in the hearts of queens. The palace seemed quiet at first, but Elias could feel a tension in the air that went beyond normal caution. The queen's subtle shifts, the soft murmurs of her attendants, even the faint vibrations in the walls, hinted that all was not calm. She had allowed humans into her inner chambers, yes, but power and politics never rested. Somewhere in the palace, schemers watched, waited, and whispered, hoping to exploit hesitation. Elias knew this. Humans had learned long ago that intelligence often mattered more than strength, and here, he would need all his skills. He approached the chamber doorway and noticed intricate symbols etched into the frame. They glowed faintly, shifting in pattern as if reacting to movement. He studied them closely. Humans had a knack for pattern recognition and logic, tools that could often turn an unknown threat into a solvable problem. These symbols are not just decoration, he murmured. They respond to presence, motion, and perhaps intention. The queen observed him quietly. She had underestimated humans' ability to analyze and adapt. Her lost companion had been skilled, but Elias demonstrated a unique combination of intelligence and instinct. She felt her curiosity grow, mingled with a hint of admiration. Elias took a deep breath and stepped closer, moving deliberately. The symbols shifted again, but he was prepared. Using careful gestures, he manipulated the pattern, testing reactions without triggering a defensive response. The glow pulsed faster, then slowed, and finally, a soft click sounded. The doorway shifted open, revealing a small chamber filled with strange devices and softly glowing panels. Inside, an unexpected figure moved, a young Xyar technician, clearly surprised by their intrusion. Elias stepped forward calmly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. We mean no harm, he said softly. We are guests here, guided by the queen herself. We seek understanding, not conflict. The technician froze, unsure whether to flee, fight, or explain. The queen's presence behind Elias gave them pause. They bowed slightly, signaling that the human's intentions were being acknowledged. Elias examined the devices in the chamber. They were complex, alien machinery designed to monitor the palace and possibly its inhabitants. Yet beneath the complexity, he saw logic patterns, sequences, connections, and responses that could be understood. These are monitoring systems, he said quietly to the queen. They track movement and environmental changes. They are impressive, but not impossible to manage. The queen studied him with interest. And if someone malicious tried to use them? Elias smiled faintly. Then, intelligence and observation matter more than force. Humans have survived in far more hostile environments with far fewer resources. This is not a threat, only a challenge. Her eyes softened again. She had never considered a human could view a potential threat with curiosity, rather than fear. She began to see why her lost companion had trusted them, why humans could inspire loyalty and respect rather than only suspicion. Suddenly, an alarm chimed softly elsewhere in the palace. It was subtle, but distinct, and the queen stiffened immediately. Elias noticed it as well. "That sound is not random," he said. "Someone is moving with intent. Likely, not all are friendly." The queen's attendants whispered among themselves, tension evident. Elias motioned for the humans to take positions strategically, not as soldiers preparing for battle, but as observers ready to respond. The advantage here was intelligence, patience, and understanding, not brute force. From the shadows, a small group of palace insiders emerged, clearly testing the intruders. They moved with precision, yet Elias could see hesitation in their gestures. They underestimated the humans' ability to read patterns, anticipate moves, and respond calmly. "Do not provoke them," Elias instructed quietly. "Let us observe and guide." He stepped forward, his presence commanding without aggression. "We come with respect," he said. "There is no need for conflict. Step aside, and you may continue your duties safely." The insiders hesitated, then froze. Humans rarely spoke with such quiet authority, a tone that commanded attention without threat. Elias reminded them, in action if not in words, that power could be conveyed without violence. The queen watched closely, her eyes narrowing. She recognized that Elias was teaching her court, subtly demonstrating that humans could navigate danger with intelligence, calm, and dignity. It was a lesson she had not expected to learn from a single visitor. The standoff ended without confrontation. The insiders retreated, unwilling to challenge the humans further under the queen's gaze. Elias nodded slightly, signaling calm, and turned to the queen. "Your palace is well protected, and rightly so. But intelligence, respect, and careful observation are as strong as any defense." She regarded him silently, absorbing the lesson. Her people often relied on force and fear to maintain control. Here was a human showing her another way: cleverness, awareness, and empathy. She had been reminded of her lost companion, yes, but she was also learning that humans brought unique strengths into her world, strengths that could complement her rule rather than threaten it. Hours passed as Elias and the queen moved through the palace. They encountered puzzles in the architecture, hidden corridors, and intricate security systems. Each time, Elias demonstrated patience and ingenuity, solving problems without confrontation, showing that humans could navigate complexity with logic, observation, and subtlety. During a brief pause, Elias spoke softly. "I am not here to replace anyone you have lost, Your Majesty. But I am here to remind you that some values endure courage, patience, and wisdom. Humans carry these values, not as weapons, but as tools to connect, to protect, and to understand." The queen's gaze softened. She realized that Elias's presence did more than solve physical challenges. It reshaped her perspective. Trust could be extended carefully. Understanding could be built slowly. And intelligence could triumph over brute force. Humans were capable of remarkable feats, not through violence, but through observation, patience, and ingenuity. The day drew to a close, and the palace glowed softly in the alien twilight. Elias and the queen paused in a chamber, overlooking the city. Below, towers shimmered with energy, and life moved with a quiet rhythm that seemed both alien and beautiful. "You are different from other humans," the queen admitted. "You remind me not only of what I lost, but of what humans can truly be. I underestimated you." Elias inclined his head. "We are not perfect, Your Majesty. But humans endure. We learn. We adapt. And sometimes, we remind even the strongest rulers of the value of memory, understanding, and patience." The queen's gaze softened further, a rare smile flickering across her features. "Perhaps," she said, "there is more to this species than I thought. Perhaps we have more to learn from each other than I realized." As night fell over the palace, Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. This was the first real test of their presence in the Xylar world. And it had been passed not with weapons or aggression, but with intelligence, respect, and patience. Humans had demonstrated their worth in ways that no display of force could. And as the queen stood beside him, contemplating what she had learned, Elias realized that this was only the beginning. Challenges would come, tests of trust and understanding. But humans had a way of rising to challenges, not because they were stronger, but because they were clever, observant, and resilient. The palace rested under a calm, alien sky, but inside, a quiet revolution of understanding had begun. Elias had reminded the queen of her past, yes, but he had also shown her the future, one in which humans and Xylar might work together, not as enemies, but as allies. And in that realization, both species found a glimmer of hope, a possibility for connection, and a new respect for the strength found not in violence, but in courage, intelligence, and understanding. The day began with a soft hum that seemed to come from the palace itself. Light filtered through crystalline structures overhead, casting gentle patterns across the corridors. Elias walked beside the queen, who moved with a fluid grace, her eyes focused but thoughtful. For hours they had traversed the palace, solving small puzzles, navigating hidden chambers, and learning the rhythms of a world both alien and alive. But beneath the calm surface, tension still lingered. The queen's court was not entirely at peace with her openness to humans. As they approached the council hall, Elias sensed the subtle vibrations in the floor, a quiet warning of activity ahead. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Something is happening," she said, her voice low. "Not all of my court approves of your presence." Elias nodded, understanding. Humans had long survived, not by force alone, but by reading situations, anticipating danger, and acting with intelligence. "We will observe first," he replied calmly. "We can act if necessary, but only when the time is right." The council hall was enormous, circular in design, with towering windows that looked out over the city. Members of the queen's inner circle had gathered, their expressions tense, their postures rigid. Whispers traveled across the room like faint currents of wind. Elias noted the subtle signs: crossed arms, narrowed eyes, glances exchanged between courtiers. These were not gestures of aggression, but of challenge, curiosity, and suspicion. The queen addressed them in a tone that was both commanding and measured. "These humans are our guests. They come with respect, and they bring understanding." A murmur went through the hall, some curious, some doubtful. One of the courtiers, a tall Xylar with reflective eyes, stepped forward cautiously. "Your Majesty, we do not question your judgment, but hesitation can be dangerous. How can we trust these humans?" Elias stepped forward slightly, bowing in respect. "We understand your concern," he said in calm, clear tones. "Trust must be earned. We do not expect it blindly, and we do not demand it. We seek to demonstrate through action, not words, that our presence is honorable, and that our intentions are genuine." The court fell silent. Few humans had spoken directly to the Queen's council with such quiet authority, and even fewer had managed to command attention without fear or threat. Elias's calm demeanor, his patience, and his respect for their customs spoke louder than any weapon ever could. The Queen's eyes softened as she observed him. She realized that Elias was not only solving problems in the palace, he was also demonstrating humanity's unique strength, intelligence, combined with empathy. He reminded her not just of her lost companion, but of the qualities she had admired in him: courage, loyalty, and the ability to act wisely without dominance. A sudden alarm sounded softly from the far end of the hall. It was subtle, not a call to arms, but a signal of anomaly. Courtiers shifted uneasily. Elias noted the rhythm, the pattern, and the faint vibrations underfoot. "Someone is testing us," he said quietly. "It is likely a small group attempting to challenge your judgment." The queen's mandibles moved slightly, a sign of thought. "They are my people," she said. "Some do not understand the value of observation over aggression. They may test you." "Human," Elias nodded. "Then we shall show them that intelligence, respect, and patience are stronger than haste or fear." From the shadows of the hall, a small group of insiders emerged, their movements careful, yet clearly deliberate. Their expressions were wary, yet curious, and their intentions were unclear. Elias did not step back. Instead, he allowed the group to approach, studying their gestures and subtle signals. Humans had long survived in uncertain situations by reading intentions, predicting actions, and responding with calm intelligence. This was no different. One of the insiders stepped forward, a device in their hands. It was a mechanism unfamiliar to human eyes, yet Elias could see its purpose. It monitored movements, and could potentially disrupt the palace's systems. He observed it quietly, then spoke softly. "Your purpose is clear," he said. "But we mean no harm. Stand down, and we may all learn together." The insider hesitated, scanning the room, noticing the queen's gaze fixed firmly on them. They could sense Elias's calm authority, and something in their hesitation told them that force would not succeed here. Slowly, they lowered the device, stepping back to join their companions. Elias allowed them space, signaling that patience and understanding were more powerful than confrontation. The queen observed this carefully. She realized that humans did not simply react. They analyzed, they anticipated, and they guided outcomes with subtlety. She began to see why her lost companion had trusted them, and why humans, despite being physically weaker, could be formidable allies. After the moment of tension passed, Elias turned to the queen. "Your palace is a marvel," he said gently. "Its systems are intricate, its guardians attentive, but intelligence, observation, and empathy are as strong as any defense. Humans have long relied on these qualities to survive, and they remain our greatest strengths." The queen's gaze softened, her thoughts drifting back to her companion. She remembered the late-night discussions, the strategies they had devised together, and the trust that had bound them. Elias's presence reminded her of all that, but also showed her that humans continued to carry these qualities. They were not just survivors. They were teachers, guides, and allies. Hours passed as they moved through corridors filled with soft light, strange flora, and panels of glowing symbols. Each challenge they encountered was a test of patience and intelligence. A hidden doorway that required careful observation. A sequence of symbols that responded only to logic and subtle gestures, and passages that shifted slightly depending on movement. Each time, Elias demonstrated his skill calmly, guiding the team and showing the queen that humans could navigate complexity without aggression. During a brief pause in one chamber, Elias spoke softly. "We are not here to replace what you have lost, Your Majesty," he said. "But we are here to remind you that courage, intelligence, and patience endure. Humans carry these values, not as weapons, but as tools to connect, to protect, and to understand." The queen regarded him silently, absorbing the lesson. She realized that Elias's presence was more than practical, it was transformative. He was teaching her court that trust, intelligence, and careful observation were as important as strength, that even the smallest gestures could influence outcomes in ways that power alone could not achieve. A new alarm sounded, sharper this time, from deeper within the palace. Elias's senses went immediately on alert, but he did not panic. "This is no accident," he said quietly. "Someone seeks to challenge us, to disrupt the order. But with patience, we will uncover the truth." The queen's attendants moved quickly, yet carefully, following her silent commands. Elias studied the patterns of their movement, predicting the route of potential interference. "We must act with precision," he said. "Observation first, reaction second. That is how humans survive." From the shadows emerged the source of the disturbance. A small faction of courtiers attempting to manipulate palace systems. They were skilled, but inexperienced with humans' subtle intelligence. Elias calmly identified the logic behind their actions and moved to neutralize potential harm, not with force, but with careful intervention. He guided the mechanisms back into proper alignment, demonstrating control without confrontation. The courtiers paused, realizing that their challenge had failed, not because of strength, but because intelligence and patience had prevailed. They glanced at the queen, seeing that she had allowed humans into her inner world and had witnessed their capabilities firsthand. Hesitation, reflection, and understanding had defeated what might have escalated into conflict. The queen finally spoke, her voice measured but stronger than before. "You are not only skilled, human, but wise in ways that my court does not yet fully understand. You remind me of what humans can truly be. Patient, intelligent, and capable of guiding others without domination. Perhaps there is more we can learn from one another than I realized." And Elias inclined his head respectfully. "All we ask, Your Majesty, is the opportunity to demonstrate what humans can offer, not through fear, not through strength, but through intelligence, empathy, and courage." The queen's gaze softened further. She began to see that humans were not merely visitors or outsiders. They were potential allies, capable of shaping outcomes in ways that complemented her own authority. In Elias, she saw not only a reminder of her lost companion, but also the embodiment of qualities she had long admired: intelligence, patience, and the ability to act with purpose without imposing fear. As the day drew to a close, the palace settled into quiet, the subtle hum of its living walls blending with the soft light of alien twilight. Elias and the queen paused in a chamber overlooking the city. Below, towers shimmered gently, life moving with a quiet, deliberate rhythm. Elias realized that their success was not measured by confrontation or dominance, but by the respect, intelligence, and understanding that had guided them through the challenges of the day. "Your guidance and patience have been invaluable," Elias said softly, "and your openness has allowed humans to demonstrate what we can offer. It is a beginning, not an end." The queen nodded slowly, her mandibles shifting slightly, a gesture of reflection and acceptance. She realized that Elias had taught her more than she had expected. He had reminded her of her past, of her lost companion. But he had also revealed the potential of humans to inspire, to guide, and to connect in ways she had not yet imagined. And in that quiet chamber, as alien light shimmered across walls and corridors, a new understanding was forged. Humans and Xyar could work together not as conquerors and subjects, but as allies, teachers, and friends. Elias had shown the queen that intelligence, patience, and empathy were strengths that transcended species, and that even in a world of power and politics, the calm presence of a thoughtful human could alter the course of events forever. The palace seemed to breathe with them, alive yet patient, reflecting the change that had begun. Elias knew challenges would continue to come, tests of trust and understanding. But humans had a way of rising to challenges not because of strength alone, but because of courage, observation, and the quiet power of patience. And for the first time in many years, the queen allowed herself to see a future in which humans were not just visitors, but partners. And in that vision, both species found hope, respect, and the promise of what could be achieved together. The palace woke to a calm that felt earned. Soft light flowed through the crystal structures, and the living walls glowed with steady rhythm, no longer tense or uncertain. Elias stood near a wide window, looking out over the city. The towers shimmered gently, and the movement below felt balanced, as if the world itself had taken a careful breath. Behind him, the queen approached, her steps quiet, her presence thoughtful rather than imposing. She stopped beside him and followed his gaze. "My world has not felt this still in a long time," she said. "Change often comes with noise and fear. This came with patience." Elias nodded. "Sometimes the strongest changes arrive quietly. Humans learned that long ago. Loud moments pass quickly. Quiet ones last. Quiet ones." The queen considered this, then turned toward the center of the chamber. Her attendants gathered nearby, waiting for her command. Today would decide more than palace order. It would define how the Xyar saw humans from this moment forward. Elias felt the weight of that responsibility, but he did not fear it. Humans had faced heavier moments, with less preparation, and still endured. Word spread quickly through the palace that the queen would address the court. Courtiers filled the council hall once more, their expressions curious, cautious, but no longer openly resistant. The events of the previous days had changed them. They had seen humans solve problems without threats, calm tension without force, and guide outcomes without dominance. That alone challenged centuries of belief. The queen took her place at the center, her posture strong, her voice clear. "You have all observed our guests," she began. "You have seen their behavior, their patience, and their intelligence. They did not come to command or to conquer. They came to understand." Well, murmurs spread through the hall, but none interrupted. Elias stood slightly behind her, visible but not dominant, exactly where he intended to be. "For many years," the queen continued, "I allowed loss to shape my judgment. I allowed fear to define my expectations. These humans reminded me of something I had forgotten, that strength does not fade with kindness, and wisdom does not weaken authority." She turned her gaze toward Elias. This human, Elias Ward, did not ask for trust. He earned it, not through power, but through action. The hall fell completely silent. The queen raised a single limb, and the palace responded, the light shifting gently as if listening. From this moment forward, humans will no longer be viewed as uncertain outsiders. They will be recognized as thinking allies, capable, adaptable, and worthy of respect. The words carried weight. Elias felt it, not as pride, but as responsibility. Humanity had been judged, not by its weapons or fleets, but by its character. One of the courtiers stepped forward slowly. "Your Majesty," they said carefully, "if humans are to be allies, what place will they hold among us?" The queen answered, without hesitation. "They will advise where insight is needed. They will observe where patience is required. And they will remind us that intelligence is strongest when shared." Elias inclined his head, accepting the role not as an honor, but as a duty. Humans had always survived by learning, adapting, and contributing where others could not. This was simply another extension of that truth. Later that day, Elias walked through the palace gardens with the queen. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly, their colors shifting with movement and light. The space felt personal, removed from politics and observation. Here, the queen allowed herself to be something more than a ruler. "You know," she said quietly, "when I first saw you, I thought memory was betraying me. You reminded me of someone I lost, and I feared that weakness." Elias listened, saying nothing, allowing her space. "But now I understand," she continued. "It was not weakness. It was remembrance. He believed humans would endure because they value thought, patience, and connection. You proved him right." Elias finally spoke. "He must have been an extraordinary man." "He was," the Queen said softly. "But so are those who carry his values forward." They stopped near a reflective pool. The surface mirrored the alien sky above, calm and deep. The Queen looked into it, then back at Elias. "You are not him," she said, "but you allowed me to grieve without fear. That is a gift." Elias felt a quiet weight lift. Not just for her, but for himself. "Humans don't replace what's lost," he replied gently. "We carry it forward." FY. As the days passed, cooperation replaced tension. Humans shared problem-solving methods, pattern recognition techniques, and diplomatic strategies refined through centuries of survival. The Xyar shared their deep understanding of living systems, long-term planning, and unity. Each learned from the other without trying to dominate. A final test came quietly, not through challenge, but through choice. A distant colony sent a message requesting guidance, uncertain how to resolve internal imbalance. The court looked to the Queen. She looked to Elias. "What would humans do?" she asked. Elias considered carefully. "We would listen first, then we would ask the right questions. Solutions come easier when people feel heard." The Queen nodded. "Then we will do that." The message sent was calm, thoughtful, and precise. It offered guidance without command. The response came hours later, grateful, relieved, and cooperative. The court saw it clearly now. Humanity's strength was not accidental. It was practiced, learned, and earned. On the final evening, as Elias prepared to return to his ship, the Queen stood with him at the landing platform. The sky glowed in soft layers of color, unfamiliar, yet peaceful. "You will leave," she said, "but your presence will remain." Elias smiled faintly. "That's how humans travel. We leave pieces of ourselves behind." "Oh." She extended a small symbol, a living crystal that pulsed gently. "This marks you as a friend of my people. Wherever Xylar voices reach, your name will be known." Elias accepted it with respect. "Then I will make sure it stands for something worthy." As the ship lifted into the sky, Elias looked down at the palace one last time. He did not see a throne or a ruler. He saw a future, shaped by understanding. The Queen watched until the ship disappeared into the clouds. For the first time in many years, the memory of her lost husband did not bring pain. It brought peace. He had believed in humans, and now she did too. Across the stars, humanity continued its quiet journey, not as conquerors, but as thinkers, adapters, and bridge builders. And on a distant world, an alien queen stood stronger than ever, reminded that the greatest power in the universe was not fear or force, but the courage to understand.